This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by Spring Creek Model Trains. Family owned for nearly 25 years, Spring Creek is your destination for model trains. Check out springcreekmodeltrains.com for a wide variety of offerings from today's top manufacturers and exclusive products found nowhere else. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, or at a train show near you, stop in and say wow. To see where they'll be next, visit their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. From trackside to roadside and wherever you'd see a sign, Scale Signs has it all. With over 1,400 offerings in N, HO, S, and O scale, Scale Signs has the largest collection of fine scale signs on the planet. Come see the details that bring your models to life on their website, scalesigns.com. Attention railroad fans! 1810 Designs is here to enhance the hobby with handcrafted works of art made just for you. From classic locomotive railheads to custom logos for your railroad, or maybe just good old railroad signs, they bring the spirit of the rails into your home, office, or train room. Visit 1810designs.com today and bring the railroad home. That's 18ten designs.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's time once again to find out what's happening in model railroading, and nobody better to do that with than the editor of Model Railroad News, Tony Cook. Tony, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Ray, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a pretty busy month for me with a whole bunch of things going on and things that you and I have been working on. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, it's good to be back to talking about all the cool things that are happening in model railroading with you.
Always tons of stuff. Announcements. I don't think I've ever seen so much new product arriving on the market as we've seen in the last couple of years. So it's wild. And we've got an amazing guest today, someone that I think has done so much for the hobby.
Yeah, for sure. And glad to have him on. David Lehlbach. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for letting me join.
Oh, glad to have you here. You know, Tangent seems to be one of those that we talk about quite a bit here on the show, and there's been a lot of really exciting announcements from them, Tony, and it's good to get David on here and chat a bit about Tangent.
Absolutely, because we've been doing the news show for a couple of years or almost, and yeah, Tangent has monthly new products coming out all the time, and I think I've said this before, when Tangent brought out their first, that Pullman Standard covered hopper in like 2007, I remember when I first saw it, I thought, this is so amazing. And it's so sad that there won't be any more of these because it's so good. There's no way that we'll keep getting products like this from this company. This is going to be one of those in 10 years. Somebody's going, remember that one guy that made that really awesome covered hopper? It's like, oh yeah, well, you knew that wasn't going to be sustainable. And here we are now, I can't believe it, almost 20 years, 18 years later. And boy, the stuff just keeps rolling.
You were no flash in the pan, were you, David?
No, it's been a great journey. And it's the kind of thing where when you start it, you don't know where it's going. And when you look back, you're like, how did we get here? You know, so it's kind of a great story. And it's fun to tell the story. It's models by modelers and just doing what we do, really well and accelerating the company as we go. So we got a lot of exciting things we're working on. And as usual, we just released something here this month. So we're super excited to talk about the new stuff. Not so excited about to talk about what's coming, but we're always excited to talk about what we have. So
awesome. Yeah. Let's go back to 2007. Why don't you tell us how this whole thing starts for you?
Sure, I can. I mean, in 2007, I was actually getting my MBA related to my day job, which is in the railroad industry itself. And as part of the MBA process, you had to create a company, and you had to do all the financials. You had to do a marketing plan. You had to define who the customer base is, all this stuff. And as I was doing all that, I realized, why am I doing this as a fake company? I could do this as a real company. So I actually named it during the process of that education, and I called it Tangent right from the get-go. And just prior to that, I had been working with the founder of ExactRail, who's no longer with ExactRail. And of course, ExactRail now is with Scale Trains. But going back in time, ExactRail had a founder, and I was working with him prior to that. And he and I were working on launching ExactRail together. So I had a lot of experience going to China and, understanding the process of how to launch a model train company. That wasn't mine. And then long story short, I launched one that's mine.
It's pretty neat, the concept, what we would call, I guess, in model railroading, you went from a freelance concept to a prototype, right? With, Tangent being a fantasy, and then, made it a reality. And was it kind of fulfilling needs of your own when you start talking about your initial product selection?
Yes, it was. That's exactly right. My initial product was the Pullman Standard 4740 covered hopper, which was a car that I actually had detailed from an Athearn car to a couple Athearn cars prior to the release of the Tangent model, where, I took off all the uprights and stuff on the end and put a Plano roof walk on it. And I built from scratch brass uprights with, tedious hand drilling for all the grab irons. Just a ton of work. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I started in this business as kind of as definitely a prototype modeler. And I applied a lot of those prototype modeler principles to manufacturing in mass, large quantities of models.
And you're based in North Carolina now, but I think your rail fanning interest, I remember when we've talked over the years, kind of the Pacific Northwest, weren't you out there at one point? And that was some of the earlier, some of your rail fanning stuff. Give us a little of that background on kind of what your prototype interest is. Is it Northern Pacific? I can't remember what your favorite railroad is of like the old class ones.
Yeah, well, I haven't been very disciplined in this love of Pacific Northwest railroading, but I do love Pacific Northwest railroading. It started with my parents and I went on a train trip on the Empire Builder from Seattle to Essex, Montana, stayed at the Isaac Walton Inn, which for anyone who's been there is a railfan hotel on the BNSF main line in Marias Pass. Went there in like 1988-ish, 89, I think. Somewhere in there, and stayed there and fell in love with Pacific Northwest Mountain Railroading and Burlington Northern Green. I wanted to model that railroad, and I actually went back there when I was in college and worked 2 summers at the Isaac Walton Inn as a staffer, which was fantastic because on the off hours, guess what you got to do? You got to go watch trains on mountain grades, which is like fantastic. So I had this great chance to kind of explore the Pacific Northwest. I explored parts of the former Great Northern, which is Marias Pass there. I explored parts of the Northern Pacific, like Mullen Pass, Bozeman Pass, all the Montana Rail Link at that time. And then also got to look at some other things like around Spokane, and also did some ghost rail fanning on the Milwaukee Road with a good friend of mine who's a BNSF train dispatcher now. And we had, just great times in the Pacific Northwest. And my love for that grew. I changed my modeling prototypes many times from Burlington Northern, backdated it to Northern Pacific on Bozeman Pass and the Gallatin Valley. And then I switched over because of my basement size. I switched over to a Moscow, Idaho, and Pullman, Washington concept. And then now I've landed on a Milwaukee Road concept, which is in my basement at the moment, Spokane Yard, which is an offshoot off the Milwaukee main line. It's not on the actual main line, but I model Plummer and Spokane in my basement at the moment in 1973.
Wow. Neat. Great time. Yeah. I think I know the answer to this. And I occasionally do share this with people. So let's make sure that I have been saying the right thing all these years. What's your first train set?
So my dad had a AHM based train set when I was a kid, and it was on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, 4x6 sheet of plywood. And I destroyed it. And the AHM, like little ore cars, I destroyed it. He had a Plymouth, like those Plymouth, I had a Plymouth Santa Fe engine, and he had some other CNJ River Rossi engines. CNJ, my dad was a big CNJ fan, but it was like junk, and I just destroyed it. And then we switched over to Lionel, and I was a Lionel kid for a long time until about age 8 or 9, when I was like, Dad, I got to go back to, real trains. We got to go back to HO. And then I started buying Athearn, and, I got into all that. But my dad wasn't exactly, advanced thinking in that regard. He's like, well, Lionel's fine. It's like, no, it has 3 rails. Like, it doesn't work, So it's not prototype, Dad. And then, fast forwarding, I kind of got in with a bunch of prototype modelers in Chicago when I was in high school and college. And that's when I really accelerated my interest in modeling exact prototypes.
Well, I'm looking back at this date, 2007. Doesn't that feel like yesterday, Tony?
It does to me. Yeah. It's like, that wasn't that long ago. But
I get a concept, but boy, now you're thinking about it. David's looking at, staring down a 20-year anniversary here now of tangent amazing. Scale models. And so amazing run. In that 20 years, from where you started to now, what would you say you've seen as like the biggest difference in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the big change in the market is something that I was really happy to see. When I started Tangent, people didn't recognize that the 4740 Pullman covered hopper that we did was necessarily different from the Intermountain 4750 covered hopper. And that's effectively the difference between an SD40 and an SD40-2. I mean, those are not the same engines. Doesn't matter how you look at it, they are not the same engines. And that kind of carries through with those Pullman hoppers. And when I started, I think a lot of the market really did have trouble discerning those things. And I think the market has kind of come along in its advanced interest in modeling exact prototypes. Like it went from, okay, we buy a bunch of kind of cheapish cars or nice looking cars that are detailed, but the ones that I found on sale. And the market has expanded towards, I'm wanting to model like the original Norfolk Southern, for instance, in North Carolina, or, I want to model, Santa Fe and Barstow exactly to the prototype. Like people are wanting to at least try to model something that they remember and a time frame that they remember. And they can do it because of the abundance of new equipment that's coming out, as Tony mentioned early in the podcast here today. There's lots of new models that are coming out on a regular basis, and they're filling those holes for people to be able to model something more specific instead of modeling what they got cheap at the show.
Right.
And I think that is the great part of what the market has changed. And I think I'm going to give a little bit of a nod to Tangent here. I think Tangent really has helped that along. We've done more than 50 prototypes now that are exact replicas. And, we often go into very large amounts of detail variation and tooling variation to make them exactly right. Like not only just a 4750, but I've got like $400,000 worth of, 4750 tooling hanging around.
And I think that to me is the thing, you look at Tangent in the mid 2000s, we already had like the Athearn Genesis brand, Lifelike. It had, Proto, like their 4427s and the like transition era boxcars. We had a lot of decent models, but again, I don't, as much as Tangent has helped driven that, well, now you don't have to settle for, well, that's a center flow, but it's not really the right capacity what that is. And I think that's something that not only do we have the models now, I think hobbyists are getting that appreciation. As David said, I think an SD40 versus an SD40-2, not the same at all. And if you talk to, a half dozen modelers, I would say at least 5 out of 6 would all agree and say, oh yeah, that's a completely different thing. But I think there was a time where you could basically hand somebody like the old blue box, like ACF 5250 center flow, and it's, oh yeah, I'm going to paint this for this or that. It's like, well, but that's a 4600. Yeah, but it's a center flow. Like at most, they were looking at maybe the roof hatches. Was it trough or round? And was it 4 bays at the bottom or 3? And they're fine with it. And now when I look at the stuff that Tangent has done, and it's driven the market more to that, you see other companies doing the same thing, are trying to, is, well, no, does it have the side stiffener? And what are the gates on the bottom here? And, is that a Morton roof walk on the top? I mean, it's driving that part of the market. Whereas one time you would have looked at it and said, it's a 40-foot box car. It's like, no, well, yes, but that's, from about half a mile it is. But once you start looking, they're all different. And I think that's something that's really made for excitement is cabooses. The Southern caboose that we'll talk about in the news section, that bay window, is a great example. I think there's a time that you could have taken anybody's bay window caboose, painted it up for Southern and said, there you go. And now when I look at like the New York Central Bay window, the Rock Island Bay window, and again, some of these are international car or close to where you think, well, isn't it all the same? It's like, we'll start looking at these and not at all. And once you see them done right, again, looking at like the old blue box bay window painted for Southern or Illinois Terminal or something, at one point it didn't raise the eyebrow that now it's like, oh, that's not even close.
To go back a little bit to what you were saying, those manufacturers back in that era didn't even describe the models correctly.
Exactly.
The Pullman Standard 4740 from Athearn was marketed as a 54-foot PS hopper, or covered hopper. Sorry, PS covered hopper. And, so they didn't even describe it correctly. Right. I mean, and that's because at that time, that kind of level of industry knowledge was relatively good for locomotives, but for freight cars and cabooses, it just didn't exist.
It didn't exist. No, we didn't know what. Yeah, I'm working on the HO Collector Annual right now, and you talked about AHM stuff, and it's hilarious to see when that FlexiFlow hopper comes out from AHM in the early 70s. They call it like 3 different things and never a FlexiFlow. They call it an airflow. They call it a center flow. They say it's a different kind of covered hopper from that little PS2 that they'd done. Like trying to describe it, it's like, why don't they just call it the FlexiFlow that it is? Yeah. But again, as you say, like with the Athearn, those, that 5250, I think, was always just sold as a center flow hopper.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, well, one is all the same. It's like, oh my gosh, no. And as your most recent, that PS2 2929, again, those are all over the place. As I put that in Model Railroad News, I show in the back the old Roco, which was Robbins Rails AHM, is like a 3615. Then you have the
3215, yeah,
32, and then the Walthers and Athearn are early and late versions of the 2893. Then yours is a 2929. And again, I think not that many years ago, it would have been, it's just a 3-bay covered 70-ton covered hopper. And that doesn't cut it now.
I find talking about it in diesel terms helps a little bit. It's like the difference between a GP38, a GP38 AC, a GP38-2, right? Like it's like they're different things that are not, they're not all the same. And these Pullman hoppers are great examples of that, or the ACF ones that you were mentioning earlier, and then that's just that specificness that I think, to get back to Ray's question, where Ray asked, how's the market changed? I think this is a great example of how we all have, and I mean, we as a hobby have become smarter about the prototypes that we've seen on the rails for decades. And now when we go back and look at slides or videos, we see things that's like, oh, like you see new things, because I mean, I love nothing more than when customers say, I only need this Southern caboose and then I'm done buying models forever. And it's like, hold my beer. I will prove you wrong. And if you keep educating yourself, you will find there's other things that you quote need, unquote. You know what I mean? If you choose to decide to do that. And that's the beauty, I think, of Tangent, and where I feel like I've really tried to instill this when I talk with people. It's like, well, what do you model? Why do you model it? And what does it mean? And what does it haul? And like all that comes back to the cars, and it's really cool. And the locomotives are a story too, for sure. And so are the cabooses, but the cars to me are the passion. And that's kind of where I started all this, was to try and help educate my own self about different prototypes. And I'm still educating myself about prototypes. I've got a long list of products here on my dry erase board that you can't see next to me, of products that I'd like to do. And some of them are in a very preliminary stage of research and development. Don't really know much about it. Haven't had a chance to put a tape measure on one. Haven't looked for drawings. Haven't really built a roster. There's all this work to do.
Well, anyway. Speaking of education, one thing I want to bring up, and something I've mentioned multiple times on the What's Happening in Model Railroading shows, whenever Tony sends me links to tangent scale models at tangentscalemodels.com, I sit there and I start spacing out, and it's not really spacing out. I'm reading, because you have driven a lot of education. You provide so much information on your website about each of these models, the history, I'm scrolling. I'm still scrolling on the 2929s, and I haven't hit the bottom yet of all the information that you share. And that's so amazing for modelers like myself that don't really know a whole lot about the differences between these models, between a 4750 and the next, and you provide all of that right on your website. It's so useful, again, to get the modeler understanding what they're buying and what the actual purpose of the car was.
Yeah, we've actually had, for the first time ever that I recall, and maybe people have said this in the past, but on our Facebook page, just with this Southern Caboose release from yesterday, there are like 3 people said, that is way too much information. And I can't remember anyone actually saying it in those direct words, but I think once one guy said it, a few other guys are like, yeah, he's right, you know. And I'm like, all right, I'll take that, but I'd rather over-educate than under-educate. And, I find it's fascinating. Like, this is the best part of this hobby, is the fact that we can constantly evolve and learn. You don't know it all. I love it when guys come to me at a train show and act like they know it all. And it's like, especially on a product that we've just released, because it's like, I've like literally been on my hands and knees on Southern Cabooses. I know everything about Southern Cabooses with Dan Kohlberg, my R&D guy. The two of us have climbed all over and measured and photographed every inch of these cabooses. In fact, 4 of them. So, not just 1, 4 of them. So, and there's different reasons for that. But yeah, it's the passion just kind of rolls through, and, we're just here to help educate. And obviously we want to sell models, but this is just geeking out. That's all it is.
Well, perhaps maybe the problem with it is, after seeing your website and reading these articles, you can no longer live in the bubble of ignorant bliss, right? You know way too much to do it wrong. Now you have all the information to do it right.
I think for me, the toughest company to do product announcements for is Tangent, because again, he'll send me the release thing, but like on these cabooses, it's 69 to 74 is the build dates for them. You've got later versions of them. There's so many things to try to nail just in the road names that he'll do in a first run. And then he'll always throw a wild card at me at the bottom with, and there's like 6 undecorated kit versions also available, and will list like road names or it's like, oh, because a lot of times I'll say, and for those wondering what future releases for this car may be, look at the undecorated kit that also shows this, and this railroad as prototype, which, is not in the first run. So again, that the level of minutia, and, we all support that in diesels. And that became, and again, as we talked about generic names, you can go way back to the early days of plastic, and an F unit or an Alco FA, Varney or Hobby Town or Hobby Line might have just said Alco Diesel or, General Motors A unit. And it's like, well, it's an F3 and it's some kind of phase of an F3, but that meant nothing. And again, now you look at things, and locomotives have gotten that longer than freight cars have, but I'm thrilled to see rolling stock get that same level of, this is an early, late, whoever's version. And again, it's wonderful. As he says, this, the more you learn on this stuff, I think this is such a great part of the hobby, is the rabbit holes you go down and come back and go, wow, I never knew that this was this or that, because I always just thought it was the same as this other one.
Yes. The number of rabbit holes that we go down in our product development cycle it's nuts. I mean, we go down rabbit holes before we tool a model, or design a model. We go down rabbit holes after we design a model and go, oh crap, did we miss this? And then we have to go back and maybe fix something or whatever. And then you press go and tool it. And then you do it again when you do the lettering steps and the paint steps. And it's like, oh crap, is that paint separation with the roof line, or is it underneath the roof ridge? It's like, there's a lot of different things that we worry about, like as we go through the cycle, and we second guess ourselves. And I say, we, because it's mostly Dan Kohlberg and I doing all that work, we really worry about that. And I actually should give a nod. We also have a couple different designers that help us too. We'll remain nameless today, but it's really great people that help us also make sure we don't miss things in the design step, because that's a critical step. But yeah, it's very possible.
On the releases that you've done, mostly HO, obviously, and because HO is about 3/4 of the market, but you recently just did the Trinity 4750 in N-scale, which is your second N-scale release. That's on the cover of, I'm going to get it wrong. I think it's the April Model Railroad News. I don't know if it's actually landed for me yet, but yeah, the Tangent or the new Trinity N-scale hoppers on the cover of the next Model Railroad News. and I've got 3 of my N-scale guys all review it and talk about, how it did in operations and other things and how excited they were to see it. And of course, there's the wow O-scale brass tank car that you did. So you've done the one O-scale in brass tank car. You've done a couple of N-scale and mostly HO. What things do you think you've learned? I mean, obviously you're an HO modeler, but do you see the, and you hear I wish you'd make that an N-scale. And what do you see as far as that product mix? Will we continue to see some dabbling in other scales, more brass? I mean, were some of these things interesting areas, another rabbit hole you'd like to go back down?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big issue for us is rabbit holes cost time, and there's not enough bandwidth for us to do as much as we want to do. So it's really a matter of choosing your battles. And we always will prioritize HO scale when it comes to our R&D time and our production time. I will say that the Trinity N-scale Trinity was very exciting, and I intentionally did that model to try and understand more about the N-scale market. Our initial N-scale release was the UP design 3,600 cubic foot Bethlehem UP coal hoppers. And that was a little bit maybe too specific, perhaps, in prototype selection for N-scalers, although a lot of UP guys were very happy, of course, and as well as like DRGW guys and other people like that. But with this Trinity, we were able to kind of go more modern and provide a bunch of different paint schemes and cars that, really a lot of people wanted in N-scale and done right in N-scale. So we did that. Our N-scale model looks really good. The first 150, really proud of that N-scale Trinity, and we'll probably do more in N-scale in the future. I'm not going to say we're not open to that. We actually are. I will say this, we are actually working towards another N-scale release right now. So there is something in the works. And, it wouldn't be a surprise to everybody to hear me say this, but I'll say it, it's going to be something in our HO line. And a lot of the N-scale guys ask for things from our HO line. We had guys asking for Southern cabooses yesterday in N. We also had one guy ask for Southern caboose in brass and O-scale. He's like, I buy it I don't care how much it costs. I will buy it,
So we talked earlier about the market, and you talked about the changes that have made. And one thing I've noticed about Tangent is something I think is completely different in the market. And that's the fact that you guys release products without pre-order. When it comes up on your website, it's available. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's correct. We've always done it that way. We started releasing products in 2007 at the Detroit National Train Show, Detroit NMRA National Train Show, that I literally drove a rented Ford Econoline van full of almost the entire production of 4740s to that train show. I had no idea what I was doing. And I walked out onto the floor with a roller, with a hand truck full of models, and went back and forth many times. And I was ready to sell the world. I had no idea what I was doing. But yes, we do release models without almost any fanfare. We just kind of plop them out and hope that people notice, And some modelers really hate it, but most modelers really love it. The modelers that hate it are the ones that are caught off guard generally, and they are caught in a situation where they can't maybe buy them right away, and maybe they are at risk of selling out. The modelers that love it are the guys that are like, oh my God, it's so great. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about pre-orders. I don't have to worry whether or not the manufacturer is messing up something, with the paint separations or something else. I'll keep the examples to myself. But, so that's kind of into the mindset of the modeler, right? But we do release like that and have done it like that every month. I usually don't solicit a lot of help from outside parties, keep it really tight. And, I just love that approach. It's really fun to sit around and watch people, mostly in the past 2-ish years, clamor for a Southern caboose when I've been working on it since like 2019, off and on, So, it's cool. I mean, it's really cool to be able to hold that secret, to yourself and just kind of go, yep, I'm going to take care of that guy. I really will. Just give me a couple more months, or a couple of years, because I'm just not there yet. And the product development cycle on the cabooses is slow. So, it does take a while to get them out. But the beauty is a lot of the times when people are requesting things, like I'm well into it, so it's super fun to be able to kind of come back and do the surprise.
A little bit of patience seems to turn into instant gratification once they see it on the website, because now they can just press the order button and get it coming to them, which is definitely nice to not have to think about and wait and stare at a calendar. Can't wait for that to come out. It's there and it'll be shipping to you.
Yeah, we literally yesterday, in this example, the Southern Cabooses, we released them at about 11 o'clock yesterday morning. Maybe it was 10:30. I don't remember exactly when it was, but Jeremy on our team did the release, and I went over there to check out. I went over to the warehouse to check out how things were going, and the phone was ringing off the hook. And Lori, our shipping person, had already shipped like 10 of the orders. Like they were literally boxed and ready to go, and they went out and were picked up at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. So literally the day of the release, I think we got maybe 30 orders out on the first day of the release, within hours. So we definitely turn it around quickly. We're very customer driven, very customer service focused at this company.
And your products, we talked about, tangentscalemodels.com for the website. You do sell direct. The products are available instantly, but there's also, for those that do want to go into a hobby shop, you do sell through various dealers. I know Spring Creek Model Trains, that there's a lot of places too where you can go in and look at and buy Tangent. And that, for me, a lot of times, I can't remember what it was recently that got past my radar. I think it was one of your high cubes, and I was looking for something on it and ended up scouring everybody I knew that carried Tangent trying to get the road name I was looking for my dad and I think on one of the 8-door high cubes, and no luck. But of course I ended up buying a couple other. Well, it's like, okay, I'll take that Norfolk and Western then. But yeah, so Tangent stuff can be very collectible almost out of the box. I had a couple of questions from when I mentioned that you were going to be our guest. One is a return of one of your freight cars, the Pullman Standard 4000. I've had a couple of emails asking when we might see a new run on those. And then the other one, I think I know the answer to it because I've asked this several times, but it does come up. Would you ever do a locomotive?
Okay, so the Pullman Standard covered hopper, yes, we will offer those again. We're working on 4740s right now, but we'll offer those as well. The 4000s will come as well down the road. So yes, we have a plan to release more of those. And those are definitely needed because those haven't seen the light of day in quite a few years now. So
that's the couple of emails I had. Yeah, we're like, wow, when's he going to run those again?
But I mean, here's part of the problem, Tony, and you guys can probably understand this is, I want to do new stuff, and the old stuff is great too, but I want to do new stuff. And, like so far this year, we, just since January, we released the Pennsylvania Railroad Shops X58 class 50-foot boxcars. So that was, quote, a rerun. But then, since then we did the 2929. We now did this Southern Caboose. We had 2 brand new products, so it's just hard to find room for the old ones, but we are getting them. So we've got a plan to release a lot of the old stuff here. So just give us some time.
And I got one more listener submitted question. It comes from the screen handle I Heart the GW. And the question is, when can we expect to see PS 4750 Gateway Western hoppers?
I think I know who that might be from. So all I would say is, give us some time. That's what I always say to people. I hear all the requests and I do listen to them, and I try to prioritize, the requests within when we're doing a production of something where that might fit. That's where I try to slot, those requests. So, and to get to the question on the diesel, Tangent did have a plan to release a diesel back in 2017 or 18. We were pretty far into that and kind of aborted that for a couple of reasons. So at this point, the answer is no. There's a lot of freight cars we'd like to do. We feel like we're really good at that. We feel like our customers respect us and want Tangent cars. So I want to continue to fill not only the shelves with Tangent products, but also the prototype gaps with Tangent models. So there's kind of a 2-part strategy there.
Kudos to you guys, because a lot of companies do that. They end up, they spread themselves out so thin that they forget what they're great at. Mm-hmm. And it's so remarkable to hear you say that we could do diesels, we could go into other avenues, but we're really good at this. And boy, to stick to that is challenging because you want to be able to be the answer people for a lot of folks, but in reality, you're the answer people when it comes to freight cars and cabooses and that part of the market. So there's my short milk stools is credit to Tangent for doing that and sticking in your lane and continuing to do it well with continuous improvement.
Thanks. That's exactly where we're at. Yep. That's good summation.
Awesome stuff. It's so great. Tangent is one of my favorites. There's a feed mill right here in Franklin, Connecticut, not too far from where the ATLP studio is. And there's constantly older cars rolling in, and I'm always on Tangent looking to see if you got us covered. And you've covered quite a few times.
And remember, monthly releases from Tangent. So if you're not following already, like on Facebook or check their website, I always put out that information too when I see it on like Model Train Resource, Model Railroad News Facebook pages. But new products every month, as David has mentioned, goes to a lot of shows. I'm sure we'll probably see him at the St. Louis RPM in July as well. Was it last year, the year before? Whichever year, I got up that morning, I'm having my coffee and saw you had the Rock Island bay window cabooses. And literally my assistant editor, Shane, and I'm like, come on, we got to go. We got to go right now. I got to get over there and I got to get one of those cabooses before the shoulder. I can't believe he's got Rock Island cabooses here. So new stuff, and it's great to see it all the time. And again, several hobby shops carry them as well. So the thing I remember too on Tangent, I was a fan of Tangent back like before I started Model Railroad News as the editor in 2011. But like in 2007, I had just like the Tyco website. And I remember putting up banner ads for that Tangent 4740 hopper and I didn't even know David at the time, like sending the email to him saying, hey, I put these on my website of old HO freight cars. This is an amazing thing you're doing. And again, so I'm the number one original Tangent fanboy.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a tie between you and Dave Zucker at Spring Creek. I'll give him a heads or a nod because Dave Zucker came up to Tangent right at the beginning of the show in 2007, the Detroit National. And he said to me something like, these aren't Intermountain. And I was like, I know. And he said, how do I get these in my store? And I said, let's make a deal. So, he was one of the first people that supported us. And I always appreciate Spring Creek and the Zuckers, great family owned and operated business, just like Tangent is a family owned and operated business. And, we both employ great teams of people that get models to people who need it and need them. And I say need because we need them. And
yes, we do.
Yeah. And so, yeah, nod to you guys. And thanks, Tony, for always, supporting us with the magazine support as well. We love it and love to read what your guys come up with about our products and that kind of thing. So they always kind of pick up on some salient point. It's like, yeah, that's there. I get that. Yeah. It's like, sometimes it's things we hadn't thought of. So I love that.
He's my toughest critic, Ray. David will call me a lot, I think, when he's out walking. And I always think that I should count those as steps. Like, how do I get that set up on my phone that he's out like walking his dog or doing something? I'm probably sitting there eating like a ham and Swiss watching TV, but it's like, can I count these as steps too? Because I'm like right there along with you on this walk. But he will say, so they picked out this or they noticed that, but they completely forgot this other. It's like, it's just too much. As I say, that in-scale hopper, I spread those 3 samples out to 3 different reviewers and said, tell me what you think of it. I want to know operationally how it compares to other models, everything, because no matter what you say, I know I will get a call or email with, well, I can't believe they didn't catch this or that I worked so hard to do this or that. And how'd they miss it? I say, I'm sure they appreciated it.
Yeah.
But, so it's, and again, it's fun. There's no other line of models that again has that kind of interplay or there's just that whole discovery process because they're so intricate.
Maybe next time David will send his samples with those little Post-it notes like, look at this, and have it all over the sample just to make sure that it's all highlighted.
Yeah. We've started to do that with our cabooses where we point out a lot of the salient features with a picture. We have that description in every one of our press releases. We describe all those things, but I think the picture is worth 1,000.
Oh, excellent. David Lehlbach from Tangent Scale Models. You can check out their website at tangentscalemodels.com. Thank you so much for coming on Around the Layout and telling us all about Tangent.
Thanks for having me, Ray. And thanks everybody out there in listening land. We appreciate your business and your support of our company.
Well, Tony, that was a long time coming to get Dave from Tangent on here. He's got a really exciting company. I just love seeing new products rolling out of Tangent Scale Models.
Dave is a great guy. I've known him for years. And yes, it's, as he mentioned to us, the models just come out and they're available. So he's always a tough person at times to get on programs like yours because he doesn't have a half dozen things he's going to tell you about in the future. In fact, a lot of it's very top secret that, he never would tell me things. And then it'd be like, wow, I didn't know you were working on that. So yeah, he's a lot of fun and a great, again, like so many people in the industry, you can tell that he just really has a passion for what he's doing and really enjoys it. And that's fun to see.
Yeah. And I do like the element of surprise combined with that instant gratification. So yeah, you don't get to stand there at, upcoming pre-orders, but once they hit the website, you can order it. And it's like that, wow, that really nice surprise of the cool stuff that they're coming out with.
Absolutely.
So the industry is full of some more cool stuff coming out. Why don't you tell us what's happening in model railroading?
It is. Speaking of just arrived and available, we've got a lot of the new products that we're going to talk about today are things that have landed or available now to purchase. But we do have a few new items that are still in the reservation or pre-order stage. The one really exciting thing I saw among the Walthers announcements recently, there's a new run of proto GP9s, and they're doing various phases of the Jeep 9. These are high hoods like Penn Central, Chicago Northwestern, but really the standout model in the group are those goofy looking Western Maryland chop nose Jeep 9s. And to me, lots of roads chopped the high hood Jeeps, but wow, that Western Maryland has got to be probably the homeliest GP. It makes the Paducah rebuild look pretty sexy, I think. They just drop the nose, the number boards stay on the short hood where they would have been up tall. It's like you just took the old Athearn blue box shell, cut a slot out and lowered it down. No number boards, nothing up top, but just that flat piece of metal with a windshield. But that makes them really cool at the same time. What Walthers is going to do, and again, this is a proto HO scale GP9, they're going to do two versions of this, and it's a skirting difference. So it'd be the area over the fuel tank that'll change between the two toolings. And the Western Maryland prototypes, it's interesting. I think there's 20 of them. They were numbered 25 to 45 were their original numbers. In later years and towards like the chassis system stuff, they go to 6,400 numbers. They were in the black Western Maryland with the gold speed letter, and then they got the kind of I've seen it called Circus, the red, white, and black paint as well. And then there are chassis system repaints. I think in this first Walthers run, there's the black and then that Circus red, white, and black scheme are being done. And out of the 20, the first one that they outshopped with the low nose had two panes for its front windshield, but then the rest of them all had a single wide, like picture window windshield, I think is what they're called. And that's the model that Walthers is doing, which is the more common because I think it's 19 out of the 20 chops all had that. And it's interesting too, those are very early. When you think of chopping and lowering noses outside of a wreck situation where they had to, as far as a program to really do that, it seems that's more mid 1960s and later. And yet these Western Marylands were done in 1962 on GP9s that, the Jeep 9s introduced in 56. So as far as being a high hood, not for many years before they got lowered to these odd duck Jeep 9s. But that's a fun release to see coming from Walthers. And those are again up for reservations and pre-orders now from your hobby dealer.
Whenever I see that speed letter scheme, I can't help but think about my late friend, Tony Donatelli's Western Maryland Tigard Valley division. And boy, I miss him and I miss that layout. And if you don't know which one I'm talking about, you can check it out on Facebook. We'll provide the links in our show notes around the layout.com/152. What an awesome Western Maryland layout that was. And like I said, every time I see that scheme, I remember Tony. So very cool to see.
I'm sure these will be popular. And there's undecorated coming in this group too. In the last week, I've seen 2 or 3 pop up on Facebook of, I think one was Ontario Northland or somebody else had a chop job that was close. So as far as fodder for craftsman projects, this tooling will no doubt serve several modelers as well. Other big news thing, Markland Tricks. So Markland would be 3-rail AC. The Tricks will be the standard North American 2-rail DC, and it'll also be DCC sound. The Class D, which is the bigger Shea steam locomotive, has been announced in HO scale, and they're also doing some lumber flat cars. This is standard gauge because, Shea's famously are narrow gauge, but there are standard gauge as well. This is a new announcement from, again, Markland and Tricks for most of the listeners that are North American, Canada, the US, Mexico, and such. The Tricks model would be the one of note, or which would be after, because it's set up for our stuff. And that's a new addition from them that was just announced.
Awesome.
Are you a Shea modeler?
I am not a Shea modeler.
No, I'm not. I have a couple, but yeah, I don't. I had to look twice at it, as to what it was, but an interesting piece. Reservation deadline is closing on Rapido Trains SD7, SD9, SD10. This is their first round of these early 6-axle EMD units. These should be dynamite models. Excited to see them. Of course, the 7 and 9 are the legit EMD releases. The 10 is like Chicago Northwestern rebuilds, all kinds of road accurate details on these. They come with DCC and ESU Loc sound, and then standard DC as well. Those Rapido train guys are always so busy, but this definitely and boy, they've got a lot of motive power on the way. But this SD7, SD9, SD10 is one, if you've not put in your reservation for that, take a look at Rapido's website or check with your hobby dealer, because there are some really neat models in that bunch.
Also saw news recently that they're opening up a warehouse in Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York, yes. If you go to YouTube, Rapido's channel on YouTube, the owner of Rapido Trains, Jason Schron, discusses they'll have dual offices. Their one will remain in Canada, in the Toronto area, and then they're opening up as well in Buffalo. So interesting changes there, and you can learn all about that from Jason himself on the Rapido Trains YouTube channel, and if you're not following the Rapido YouTube channel, you got to. It is, they do so many fun videos, and lots of great information too. So check them out on YouTube.
For sure.
And then this month's new release from Tangent Scale Models was the Southern Railway Bay Window Caboose series. This is modern bay windows, 1969 to 1974. And they've got several versions of the Southern in red with the yellow cupola area, bay window area, and then some Norfolk Southern, like later versions. These are limited production. They landed here just in the last week or so. So mid-March release from Tangent is their 7th highly detailed HO scale caboose replica. And again, it's the Southern Bay Window series. So check those out. And their most recent freight car is that Pullman Standard 2929, which I think they still have some stock on those. And that's an early 60s 3-bay. I think we talked about it on the last show. So again, check Tangent for new stuff there.
The one that caught my eye was the Norfolk Southern Chattanooga Terminal version of it. I just thought that was pretty neat. I'll have to do some research into the prototype, although I'm sure if I do digging enough, I might find some more information on Tangent's website, Tangent Scale
Probably
Models.
on his website, yeah. Just got to see recently the new run of Athearn in-scale F89F TOFC flat cars. This is an 89-foot flat car that has graduated to the Genesis series. They've added coupler cut levers on the end and train line hoses. The flat car itself is die-cast metal, which of course helps with the weight, especially on in-scale. And then there's an all-new tool plastic 45-foot Frohoff Z-Van trailer, which those look brilliant too. There are versions of the new Genesis flat car with one of the Z-Vans as a release, and they come in a neat blue box with the two models are each in their own little clear jewel cases. And then the Z van itself, it's not a Genesis model, it's a regular Athearn release, is available by itself as well. So check those out. There's, I think, it's 4 or 6 different looks for the Z van. And then the flat cars come in several road names as well. And the flat cars come without vans as well. So you can get just the flat car, you can get the flat car with one of the new Z vans, or you can buy the Z vans all by themselves. That's new and in scale from Athearn and is available now.
We sure love our acronyms. Tell us what TOFC stands for.
Trailer on flat car.
And it's just funny that, we have so many acronyms, maybe in this whole world, but yeah, all these ones that kind of get glossed over and not really know what they stand for. So
it is. I remember being at a train show in Springfield, Illinois many years ago, and a guy was selling something and the person was asking for this or that. And I think it was like his wife or daughter was there manning the table while he had run off. And she said, I have no idea what you're talking about. To me, this is all letters and numbers. And it's like, it is. And it's like, wow, yeah, that's really, I mean, why in a nutshell, we have this crazy fascination with, GP40, ATSF, letters and numbers, just throw them at me. I enjoy it. So yeah, that's a way to look at it.
Yeah, we love to be able to provide some clarity here on ATLP.
Oh, just landed from Class 1 Model Works is their all new ARI, that's ARI rail car, center flow hopper. This is a modern contemporary center flow, highly detailed model. They've got several road names in the bunch, including like a patched, the black bell scheme KCS got turned over to other folks after the lease was up on those cars, and they have like the Crab Orchard and Egyptian patched version of that. So some interesting looks there. And I think those are already, that first run look like low stock I saw on several of them. Class 1 Model Works sells direct on those things. They also have some new heavy duty flat cars, new 86-foot high cubes, and new loads for those heavy duty flat cars. And if you've not checked out their cool wheel loads for flat cars, check those out. They come with the rack that you put directly on like a 50 or 60-foot flat car, and they've got beautiful, they're plastic wheels, but they've got all the details, even like little stickers on the side of the wheel, as you see on brand new wheels that haven't been used yet. So check those out as well. That's from Class 1 Model Works.
Wow, looking at the photo of the Crab Orchard and Egyptian version of the ARI 5200, and I can see why 2 road numbers are already sold out. That it almost comes like a weathered. It's got like a weathering look to it with the patching. Looks super sharp in their photo. So very cool looking car.
It looks real. It looks good. I need to. I was gonna bug those guys this week because I think I'd reviewed those. They sent me early samples, and I don't remember the Crab Orchard having that kind of weathery look. Yeah. So I don't know if that was something that was changed as it went to production, and I saw an early sample. But yeah, that one caught my eye too. But very cool. Yeah, check those out. In scale, folks, there is a new run of Trinity coal hoppers. This is a Fox Valley model release through Scale Trains. So, Scale Trains has a number of sub-brands now, and Fox Valley's got this new run of modern Trinity coal hoppers. In scale is available, and the Fox Valley nameplate gets the HO Scale Norfolk and Western Class J, 484 Northern, which I'm very excited to see that one come back. That's a MTH Heritage tooling, and it'll be Fox Valley branded. I think these coal hoppers, as I remember, they were Fox Valley. They were Matt Gudinski tooling to begin with. So yeah, they're back out, and I think there's new modern, those white refrigerators. There's a new run of those as well from Scale Trains and In Scale.
Awesome, good looking stuff.
Are you getting out into the garden to do any garden railroading? I know you got a lot going on right now, but are you going to start that G Scale empire this year?
I do have 2 thumbs, but they're not green, so I don't have a garden whatsoever. But I mean, G Scale is so awesome. The bigger scales, it's hard to find places for them, but when you see them, you walk Amherst and just see all the bigger scale stuff set up out in the Mallory building, and it's just amazing. They're just so appealing to the eye because of the size. It's really cool stuff.
Absolutely. So here is your easy, like, gateway start into G Scale. Bachmann has just released a G-scale speeder. This is a powered model. It's, the typical little speeder, the box type thing. It's got the two figures sitting in the open cab. There's Milwaukee Road, New York Central. There's also a Christmas one, and they're sending me a couple of samples on this. I'm eager to see it and see how well, it operates and how good it looks. But if you're looking for, even just as a display model for your desk or a mantle or something, I think most of us railroad folks love those old speeders. I love it they were around forever and then just one day gone. Basically, it's a high rail pickup truck today. But at one time, especially like out on the Rio Grande, I remember seeing them all over the place. So they're a really cool piece of railroad equipment. The Bachmann one is fully assembled. It's powered, it's got lights, all that. And there's like 4 road names in the group. So if you're wanting to dabble or just have something in G scale, this would be a fun thing to have, even if it never actually turned a wheel for you on any G scale track. But I think once you got it, you probably at least would want to put up a loop of G scale just to see the thing run in circles. But these are very cool. And I think the retail on them is like $165. So if you look at like the discount and such on those, shop around, and I think you'll be surprised. It'd be a fun piece to pick up for not a lot of money.
I started chuckling as soon as I clicked on the link because I saw the Christmas one, and I zoomed in, and it's 2 elves in the speeder, and the road number is 1/2 is the that's pretty funny. That's great. Great stuff coming out of Bachmann.
The other new thing from Bachmann is an HO scale. It's their Trinity 5161, and that's a 3-bay center flow. And this is one they just did that air slide I've reviewed recently in Model Railroad News. Their center beam is coming back with wrapped lumber loads, and the new coil car with angled hoods, and then I think they have round hoods coming for that as well. And that coil car's in both HO and N, so lots of freight cars rolling in from Bachmann. And this Trinity 5161, really popular car. If you've stood trackside anywhere in North America, you've obviously had to have seen one of these. Comes in like Canadian Pacific, BNSF, about 4 or 5 popular road names on that one. And that's a brand new, ready to run freight car from Bachmann, their Trinity 5161 center flow. Then finally, I have a book. Fire Crown Media are folks that own Model Railroader and Trains Magazine. I got several new of their great softcover books came in the last week. And the one that caught my attention the most was the Model Railroader Guide to N-Scale Railroading. And it truly is just that. If you're a HO person, if you're not yet a model railroader, but you've been an armchair model railroader, this book, it's a softcover book. I think they retail for like $21.99 and basically covers N-Scale and getting started in it. And again, this is one of the things I think this series of books they're a great bunch. Like in this latest group of samples, there's one on DCC, on weathering, bench work, modeling a short line. I mean, great topics that are loaded with information, lots of pictures, diagrams, all that kind of stuff, lots of facts. But this guide to N-Scale railroading, if you're not an N-Scaler, it's fun to pick up. If you are an N-Scaler, it's fun to pick up and go, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, that's not the way I would do that. So I think it's fun to look through those kind of things. But again, check those out. I think Fire Crown Media's, it's shop.trains.com. is where you can go to find the links to all of those. And of course, you'll have it in the show notes as well.
We will definitely do that. It'll be at aroundthelayout.com/152. This guide to N-Scale railroading is definitely something needed. A lot of folks ask me when I'm at train shows, and particularly last time I was at the Worcester show a couple weekends ago, had a gentleman come up. He was holding a clipboard, and he was writing down, like, I want to learn as much as I can because I want to get my grandkids into this hobby. Mm-hmm. They show some interest, but I need to learn a ton of stuff. And he was kind of focused really on HO. But I mentioned to him, I said, with the advancements in N-Scale, the things that have happened in N-Scale over, I would say, the last decade or maybe a little bit more than that, I said, don't dismiss N-Scale as a one that could be in play for a lot of things, including operations. We usually seem to have tipped towards HO for operating layouts, but with the advancements in N-Scale and its reliability, there's no reason why you couldn't operate an N scale layout. And I'm thinking immediately to Dean Ferris's Oregon Joint Line Railroad as one that just operated so well. So it can be done. Great that there's more information out there, a guide that helps walk people down the path in N scale. So definitely check that book out if you're considering N scale or getting started, or like you said, in any other aspect of modeling in 1/160th scale.
Absolutely. And that's just a few of the things.
Yeah.
That's just a few of the things that are out.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff.
There's a whole bunch of news and some Around the Layout podcast news. If you haven't caught it yet, we have started a newsletter. That monthly newsletter hit the inboxes on March 10th. Our next one will hit inboxes on April 10th. You can check out more about our newsletter, ATLP Extra, on our website, atlpextra.com. You sign up there. It is free. And then you provided a teaser for a review on the Rapido Trains e-units. That was covered in your March 2025 Model Railroad News. So appreciate you submitting that. And we're looking forward to doing some product reviews along with some listener submissions, tips and tricks, and behind the scenes news at Around the Layout podcast. So get yourself signed up for that. It doesn't cost you a dime. You just go on, you put in your email, and you'll be receiving that in your inbox.
Awesome stuff. Congratulations on launching that. It was fun to see you getting kind of the template together and getting it going.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been it'll be a work in progress. We'll be growing the newsletter and adding new ideas. And again, you can check that all out at atlpextra.com. There's a bunch of stuff where you can submit as well, including one I forgot, the prototype photo of the month. So if you have a prototype photo that you'd like to share with us, we can submit it for that prototype photo of the month. You can go right on that atlpextra.com and submit it, along with any article submissions, and everything else can be done right there. So looking forward to hearing from our listeners and having them share some stuff, to share content to go into the newsletter.
Awesome stuff.
Where else can we find some more, Tony Cook? And I'll start that. It was great to see you hanging out with our good friends Mike Ostertag and Andy Dorsch on Second Section. We'll share a link to that in our show notes, aroundthelayout.com/152. But tell us about it.
Well, thanks for doing that. Was kind of a last minute thing. I think that morning I saw Andy had posted that the guests they had lined up for the show that night, that something, schedule conflict or whatever. And they said, well, but we're going to go ahead and try to do the show. And we're talking about building a diesel roster. And Andy had messaged me and asked about it. It'd be great if we could have the editor of Diesel Era on to talk about that. I said, yeah, it would be. Do you know him? And he goes, well, that's you. I'm like, oh. So, but yeah, it was a fun show. I shared some of my dad's TP&W slides and talked about their really interesting roster with a lot of variety, but not, like ones and twos of various things. So well within, you could prototypically have them all sitting on a shelf and own every locomotive they had. It was a fun show. That I like the second section. It's always fun to watch and follow along. And it was good. That was the first time I'd been on the show with them.
Awesome. Good to see you there. And where else can we find you?
ModelTrainResource.com. You can see links to the various magazines that I produce for White River Productions. And I had a lot of people asking on getting more of the old information back out online. And I've been working diligently to rebuild my catalog resource archive, where you can go and download PDF scans of vintage catalogs. And I've been rebuilding like the Tyco years from the mid 50s to the early 90s. And I think I have close to about a dozen of those back online, and more of that coming. That's at modeltrainresource.com. And for the White River items, again, there's links there, and you can go directly to shop.whiteriverproductions.com and see model railroad news that I produce monthly for them, and Diesel Era that I do quarterly, and back issues on HO Collector and the annual. There's a new annual that will be out later this year on HO Collector as well, a guide to AHM freight cars. So all kinds of neat train stuff there.
Well, you certainly keep yourself busy and with all these model railroad projects, but we certainly appreciate you taking the time to stop by and tell us what's happening in model railroading.
I always enjoy the visit, Ray. It's always fun. Great to talk to folks and share news on the hobby. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.